The studio is cold, not temperature cold, the kind of cold that settles into a room when something is about to go wrong. It's April 1973. Stage 1 at NBC Burbank. The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. The audience is seated. The band has finished their warm-up. The curtain is about to rise. Dean Martin sits in the guest chair. His hands rest on the armrests. His posture is perfect. His suit is tailored, charcoal gray, no wrinkles. His hair is in place. His face shows nothing. Johnny Carson sits across from him, smiling, but the smile doesn't reach his eyes. The cameras are rolling. The audience has just finished laughing at something Johnny said. The laughter fades. Johnny leans forward, index cards in his hand, ready to ask his next question. Then he stops. Something in Dean's face makes him pause. Dean isn't looking at Johnny. He's looking past him, toward the back of the studio, where the lights don't reach. His jaw is set. His hands haven't moved. Johnny glances down at his cards. He looks back up at Dean. The silence stretches. The audience shifts in their seats. A few people cough. Someone in the back row whispers something to the person next to them. The band doesn't play. Johnny opens his mouth to speak, then closes it. Dean's hands tighten on the armrests. The camera holds on both men. Something is about to break open. But not yet. To understand why this moment mattered, you have to go back 6 months, September 1972. Dean Martin is untouchable. His NBC variety show, The Dean Martin Show, is in its 7th season. Every Thursday night, 20 million people watch him drink, sing, and joke his way through an hour of television. He makes it look effortless. He's 55 years old. He owns a house in Bel Air, a penthouse in Las Vegas, and a reputation for never caring too much about anything. The press calls him the King of Cool. His children call him distant. Dean has 8 children from 3 marriages. The youngest, Richie, is 12. The oldest, Craig, is 41. Dean loves them all, but he doesn't know how to show it. His second son, Dean Paul Martin, is 21 years old. Dean Paul is a tennis player, a singer, a Golden Gloves boxer. He's handsome, charming, and desperate to step out of his father's shadow. In September 1972, Dean Paul enlists in the California Air National Guard. He wants to be a fighter pilot. Dean doesn't tell anyone how he feels about it. Not his wife, not his manager, not Frank Sinatra. He goes to work. He tapes his show. He golfs at Riviera Country Club. He drinks scotch at Musso and Frank Grill and tells the same jokes he's been telling for 20 years. But his hands shake when he holds the phone. His assistant notices. His director notices. Johnny Carson's producers notice when Dean's publicist calls to confirm the April booking. Dean has appeared on The Tonight Show 14 times since 1962. It's always the same: effortless banter, rehearsed spontaneity, 2 drunk guys pretending to be funnier than they are. But this time, Dean's people make a strange request. No audience warm-up, no pre-interview, no jokes about his drinking. Johnny's head producer, Fred de Cordova, writes it down and doesn't ask why. April 12, 1973, 4 p.m. Dean arrives at NBC Burbank 3 hours early. He's never been early to anything in his life. His driver pulls up to the back entrance. Dean gets out, no entourage, no assistant, no one to carry his cigarettes. He walks through the hallway alone. A security guard recognizes him and waves. Dean nods but doesn't smile. He goes to his dressing room and closes the door. Inside, there's a couch, a mirror, a small table with a coffee pot. Someone has left a bottle of J&B scotch on the table. Dean doesn't touch it. He sits down on the couch and stares at the wall. At 5:30, a production assistant knocks on the door. "Mr. Martin, we're ready for you in makeup." Dean doesn't answer. The assistant knocks again. "Mr. Martin?" Dean stands up. He opens the door. He looks at the assistant without saying a word. The assistant steps back. Dean walks past him toward the makeup room, 6:15 p.m. Johnny Carson sits in his dressing room, flipping through index cards. He's prepared 12 questions for Dean. 6 of them are setups for drinking jokes. 3 are about golf. 2 are about Frank Sinatra. 1 is about Dean's kids. Johnny doesn't know which one he'll use. He never does. The Tonight Show is jazz. You know the melody, but the rest is improvisation. Fred de Cordova knocks and walks in without waiting. "Dean's here," Fred says. Johnny looks up. "Early?" 3 hours early. Johnny sets the cards down. "What's wrong with him?" Fred shrugs. "He won't talk to anyone. Makeup said he sat in the chair and didn't say a word for 20 minutes. Johnny picks up his coffee mug. It's cold. He drinks it anyway. Maybe he's tired, Johnny says. Fred doesn't respond. Johnny looks at the cards again. He picks up the one about Dean's kids and sets it aside. Let's stay away from family, Johnny says. Fred nods and leaves. Johnny stares at the remaining 11 cards. He doesn't know it yet, but he's only going to use 3 of them, 6:30 p.m. The audience files into Studio 1. There are 240 seats. Every one of them is filled. Half the audience is over 50. They remember Dean from the Martin and Lewis days. They remember him in Rio Bravo, standing next to John Wayne, playing a drunk who couldn't shoot straight. They've come to laugh. The warm-up comedian is told to keep it short. No jokes about Dean, no drinking references. The comedian doesn't understand why, but he follows orders. At 6:45, the band starts playing the Tonight Show theme. Johnny Carson walks out from behind the curtain. The audience applauds. Johnny waves. He sits down at his desk and adjusts his tie. Doc Severinsen, the band leader, is standing near the brass section. He catches Johnny's eye and gives him a look that says, "Something's off." Johnny ignores it. He does his monologue. The audience laughs. Johnny tells a joke about Nixon. More laughter. He tells a joke about the weather in Burbank. A woman in the third row laughs so hard she drops her purse. Everything is normal. Then Ed McMahon leans over and says, "Dean Martin is here tonight." The audience erupts. Johnny smiles. He picks up his coffee mug and takes a sip. He looks toward the curtain. "Ladies and gentlemen," Johnny says, "Dean Martin." Dean walks out. The audience stands. He's wearing a charcoal gray suit, white shirt, no tie. His hair is perfect. His face is tan. He looks exactly like Dean Martin is supposed to look. But something is wrong. He doesn't wave. He doesn't smile. He walks to the guest chair and sits down without acknowledging the applause. Johnny stands and shakes his hand. Dean's grip is firm but brief. The audience sits down. Johnny sits down. The camera holds on both of them. Johnny glances at his cards. He picks up the first one. "Dean," Johnny says, "you look great." Dean nods. "How's the show going?" Johnny asks. "Good," Dean says. Johnny waits for more. Dean doesn't give it. Johnny flips to the next card. "You just finished taping for the season, right?" "Yeah," Dean says. The audience laughs, but not because anything is funny. They laugh because they don't know what else to do. Johnny taps his pen on the desk. He's starting to understand that this interview is not going to go the way he planned. He looks at Dean. Dean looks back. There's something in Dean's eyes that Johnny has never seen before. Fear. Johnny pivots. "So," Johnny says, "I heard you've been spending a lot of time in Vegas." Dean shifts in his chair. "Yeah? Still playing golf?" "Not much," Johnny laughs. "That's a first." Dean doesn't laugh. Johnny sets the cards down. He leans back in his chair and tries a different approach. "You know," Johnny says, "I've been doing this show for 10 years and I've never seen you this serious. What happened? Did Frank steal your scotch?" The audience laughs. Dean doesn't. Johnny's smile fades. He looks at Dean, and for the first time he realizes this isn't an act. Dean leans forward slightly. His hands rest on his knees. His voice is quiet. "Can I tell you something?" Dean says. Johnny nods. "Of course." Dean looks out at the audience. Then he looks back at Johnny. "I don't sleep anymore," Dean says. The studio goes silent. Johnny doesn't move. Dean continues. "I used to sleep like a baby. 8 hours, no dreams, nothing. Now I wake up at 3 in the morning and I can't go back." Johnny's hand tightens around his pen. "Why?" Johnny asks. Dean doesn't answer right away. The camera stays on his face. He looks down at his hands. "My son," Dean says. Johnny knows Dean has 8 children, but he doesn't know which one Dean is talking about. He doesn't ask. Dean keeps talking. "He's a pilot," Dean says. 21 years old, flies jets for the National Guard. Dean's voice is steady, but his jaw is tight. "Every time the phone rings," Dean says, "I think it's someone calling to tell me he's dead." The audience doesn't make a sound. Johnny sets his pen down. Dean looks up at him. "You asked me what scares me," Dean says. "That's it. That's what scares me." Johnny opens his mouth to respond, but nothing comes out. Dean leans back in his chair. "I can't do anything about it," Dean says. "I can't protect him. I can't tell him not to fly. He's a grown man. He's doing what he loves." Dean's voice cracks just slightly. "But every night I wake up and I think about what happens if he doesn't come home." Johnny's face goes pale. The audience is frozen. No one coughs. No one shifts in their seats. No one breathes. Dean looks out at the audience. You ever love someone so much it makes you sick? Dean asks. No one answers. Dean nods as if he expected that. Yeah, Dean says. Me too. Johnny doesn't know what to say. He's interviewed presidents, astronauts, movie stars, comedians. He's made a career out of knowing what to say next. But right now, in this moment, he has nothing. He looks at his cards. They're useless. He looks at Fred DeCordova in the control room. Fred is staring at the monitor, his face unreadable. Johnny looks back at Dean. Dean is staring at the floor. The silence stretches. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. 30. The audience doesn't know what to do. A few people start to clap, but it dies out quickly. Johnny picks up his coffee mug. His hand is shaking. He sets it back down without drinking. He looks at the camera. We'll be right back, Johnny says. The stage manager signals for commercial. The lights dim. The moment the camera cuts, Johnny stands up. He doesn't look at Dean. He doesn't look at the audience. He walks off the stage without saying a word. Dean stays in the chair. Ed McMahon walks over. Dean, you okay? Dean nods. He stands up and walks backstage. No one follows him. Fred DeCordova is waiting in the hallway. What the hell was that? Fred asks. Johnny doesn't answer. He walks past Fred and into his dressing room. He closes the door. Inside, he sits down on the couch and stares at the wall. He doesn't cry. Johnny Carson doesn't cry. But his hands are shaking. He thinks about his own sons. He thinks about divorce, distance, all the ways he's failed as a father. He thinks about Dean Martin, sitting in that chair, admitting to 20 million people that he's terrified. Johnny picks up the phone. He dials the control room. Fred answers. Cut it, Johnny says. What? Cut the segment, all of it. Replace it with something else. Fred is silent for a moment. Johnny, this is good television. I said cut it, Johnny says. He hangs up. Dean Martin leaves NBC Burbank at 7:45 p.m. No one stops him. No one asks him to stay for the rest of the taping. His driver is waiting outside. Dean gets in the back seat and closes the door. Where to, Mr. Martin? The driver asks. Dean doesn't answer. The driver pulls out of the lot and drives toward Bel Air. Dean stares out the window. The streets are dark. The city is lit up, but it feels empty. When they arrive at his house, Dean gets out without saying goodnight. He walks inside. The house is quiet. His wife is asleep. His youngest son is asleep. Dean goes to his study and pours himself a glass of scotch. He doesn't drink it. He sits down in his chair and stares at the phone. It doesn't ring. The episode airs 2 nights later. Dean's segment is gone. In its place, a rerun of Buddy Hackett telling jokes about his mother-in-law. The official explanation from NBC, pacing issues. No one believes it. Journalists call. Dean's publicist declines all interviews. Johnny's office says nothing, but people talk. A cameraman tells his wife what he saw. She tells her sister. The sister tells a reporter. By the end of the week, the story is circulating in Hollywood. Dean Martin broke down on The Tonight Show. Johnny Carson didn't know what to do. NBC buried it. 3 weeks later, Johnny's secretary receives a call from Dean's publicist. Mr. Martin would like to send his thanks to Mr. Carson. Johnny picks up the phone. Dean? No, this is his office. Mr. Martin asked me to call and thank you for your discretion. Johnny is silent for a moment. Is he okay? Johnny asks. He's fine, Mr. Carson. Thank you for asking. The line goes dead. Johnny never hears from Dean again. Over the next 15 years, Johnny invites Dean back to The Tonight Show 12 times. Dean declines every invitation. No explanation. Just no thank you. Johnny doesn't push. In 1987, Dean Paul Martin dies in a plane crash. He's 35 years old. His F-4 Phantom jet crashes into a mountain during a training exercise in California. The weather is clear. No mechanical failure. Pilot error, the report says. Dean Martin doesn't leave his house for 3 months. He stops performing. He stops returning phone calls. He fires his manager. Johnny Carson sends a private letter. It's handwritten. 3 pages. Johnny doesn't mention the interview. He doesn't mention the night Dean told the truth. He just writes, I'm sorry. If you need anything, call me. I'll be there. Dean never responds. In 1992, Johnny Carson retires from The Tonight Show. His final episode airs on May 22nd. It's watched by 50 million people. During the last segment, Johnny sits alone at his desk. No guests, no band, just him and the camera. He talks about his career, about the people he's met, about the moments that mattered. He doesn't mention Dean Martin by name, but he says this. There are moments in this job where you realize that what you're doing isn't entertainment, it's witnessing. You're in the room when someone tells the truth, and you have to decide what to do with it. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I hope I got that part right. The audience doesn't know what he's talking about, but a few people do. Dean Martin dies on December 25th, 1995. He's 78 years old. He dies alone in his home in Beverly Hills. His daughter Deanna finds him on the floor of his bedroom. A cigarette is still burning in the ashtray. The funeral is small. Shirley MacLaine speaks. Bob Newhart speaks. Frank Sinatra is too sick to attend. Johnny Carson doesn't go, but he sends flowers. The card reads, "I never forgot." In 2005, a bootleg tape surfaces online. It's grainy, black and white, poor audio quality. Someone at NBC made a copy before the segment was erased. The tape is 11 minutes long. It shows exactly what happened that night in 1973. Dean sitting in the chair, Johnny asking questions, the silence, the confession. The tape is watched by 14,000 people before NBC has it taken down. But by then it doesn't matter. People have seen it. They've heard Dean's voice crack when he talked about his son. They've seen Johnny Carson, the man who never lost control, go silent. What makes this story unbearable is not the tragedy. It's the fact that Dean was right. He knew. 14 years before it happened, Dean Martin told Johnny Carson that he was terrified his son would die in a plane. And in 1987, that's exactly what happened. Some people say Dean had a premonition. Others say it was just a father's worst fear, spoken out loud. But here's what no one talks about. After Dean Paul died, Dean Martin gave one final interview. It was 1988. A reporter from People magazine asked him if he had any regrets. Dean thought about it for a long time. Then he said, "I should have told him not to fly." The reporter asked, would he have listened? Dean shook his head. "No," Dean said, "but I should have said it anyway." Johnny Carson never spoke publicly about that night. Not in interviews, not in his memoir, not even to his closest friends. But in 1994, a year before Dean died, Johnny was asked by a student journalist, "What's the one interview you wish you could do over?" Johnny didn't hesitate. "Dean Martin," Johnny said. April 1973. The student asked why. Johnny looked out the window. "Because I should have told him it was okay to be afraid," Johnny said. "I should have told him he wasn't alone." The student asked what stopped him. Johnny shook his head. "I don't know," he said. "I just didn't know what to say." There's a reason NBC buried that segment. It wasn't about protecting Dean's image. It wasn't about protecting Johnny's reputation. It was about protecting the audience. Because what Dean Martin said that night wasn't entertainment. It was the truth. And the truth is this. You can be the king of cool. You can own Las Vegas. You can make 20 million people laugh every Thursday night. But when your son is flying a fighter jet at 30,000 feet and you're lying awake at 3 in the morning waiting for the phone to ring, none of that matters. You're just a father. And you're terrified. Dean Martin never went back on The Tonight Show. Not because he was embarrassed, not because Johnny asked him to stay away, but because once you've told the truth like that, raw, unguarded, dangerous, you can't go back to the jokes. You can't pretend anymore. And Dean Martin had built his entire career on pretending that nothing ever hurt. In the end, the segment doesn't exist. NBC erased the master tape. The bootleg copy was taken down. There's no official record. But the people who were there remember. The cameraman who watched Johnny's hands shake. The audience member who said she thought Dean was going to cry. The stage manager who saw Dean leave without saying goodbye. They remember. Because some moments don't need to be recorded to be permanent. They're carved into the people who witnessed them. Johnny Carson died in 2005. Dean Martin died in 1995. Dean Paul Martin died in 1987. All three of them are gone now. But the moment remains. A father sitting in a chair, admitting he's afraid. A host sitting across from him, unable to help. A silence that stretched so long it broke something in both of them. That's the story. That's what happened the night Dean Martin told Johnny Carson the truth. And that's why Carson never asked again.